Welcome to Janus Corporation's IIPP training for flammable and combustible material. What's the difference between flammable and combustible? Flammable materials will catch fire at temperatures below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Combustible materials need extra heat, more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, before they will ignite. Don't get the term combustible confused with explodable. Materials do not need to be combustible to explode. One way explosion occurs is when flammable or combustible liquids off-gas fumes in a hot area and in sufficient amounts to ignite. You can avoid explosion by storing and using flammable and combustible liquids in well-ventilated areas. Gasoline is a flammable material, can ignite at temperatures below 100 degrees. Liquid gasoline burns, but gasoline fumes, when they catch fire, explode. Because the fire, or energy, can spread faster through fumes in the air than it can through a liquid, the result is an explosive movement of energy through the fumes in all directions. When a liquid burns, only the surface of the liquid exposed to heat and oxygen actually burns. Spontaneous combustion can occur when a combustible material is prevented from off-gassing properly and is exposed to oxygen. Example, rags with linseed oil and some other cleaning materials that are placed in a pile will heat up until they catch fire. This process does not need an external heat source. Spontaneous explosion can occur if a flammable or combustible material is stored in a container that does not allow the release of heat. Example, sawdust placed in a dumpster, in plastic bags or not, will heat up. If the dumpster has a ceiling and the doors are shut, the dumpster can eventually explode. This process does not need an external heat source. Placing bags of sawdust in a locked chain-link fenced area will prevent this buildup of heat, provided the bags are not stacked on top of each other. All combustible waste should be placed in metal receptacles and removed from the project site as soon as possible. Wood dust is a combustible material that can explode given the right set of circumstances. Other combustible dust can explode in exactly the same way. The combustible dust is the fuel. The heat rising from a pile of dust, if uncontained, can disperse the dust. Ignition requires oxygen and a source of heat. Confinement or uncontrolled disbursement while burning can cause explosion. Like gasoline burns while gasoline fumes explode, sawdust in a pile will burn. Sawdust floating in the air can explode. Fuel, ignition, dispersion, confinement, and oxygen. Prevent any one of these requirements for an explosion, and the combustible dust will still burn but will not explode. Vacuuming dust, rather than dry sweeping, prevents dispersion. Approved containers and/or tanks must be used for the storage and handling of flammable and combustible liquids. Some industry-accepted color-coded storage cans are displayed here. Red, most widely used for flammable liquids like gasoline. Blue, frequently used for the storage of kerosene and similar materials. Yellow can be used to designate the storage of diesel. Green often is used for the storage of oils. Use only approved waste containers and empty it every night. No matter what color of can is used, what is actually in the can must be clearly marked. For flammable and combustible liquid storage and use. All lids, connections, and hoses must be in good condition and must seal liquid and vapor tight. All flammable or combustible liquids must be kept in closed, liquid, and vapor tight containers when not actively in use. Liquid containers should be stored in flammable liquid cabinets or fire-resistant covered containers. This includes solvent wastes and other flammable liquids on project sites. These closed containers must be in a place that prevents them from being impacted by moving vehicles. In the event of a fire, extinguishers must be of the proper type for the fire that is burning. Remember our fire safety training. There are 3 types of fire extinguishers typically found on a construction site. Class A for ordinary combustible materials, Class B for flammable liquids, gases, or grease, and Class C, energized electrical equipment fires. Janus typically has ABC fire extinguishers on our project sites. These will be effective, if used correctly, on most any type of fire on a construction site. Hold extinguisher upright and pull the ring pin. Stand back 8 feet if possible and point fire extinguisher at base of fire. Squeeze lever, hold open, and sweep from side to side. Fire extinguishers should be located within 75 feet of workers, 50 feet if gasoline, grease, or oil fires could occur, and within 10 feet of any indoor stored flammable or combustible liquid. When Janus uses or creates flammable or combustible materials on a project, withdrawal and transfer of flammable or combustible liquids from storage containers must be performed by trained personnel. Safety cans used for dispensing flammable or combustible liquids must be used at the point of use, not sprayed or poured on a cloth or towel to be used elsewhere within the area. No smoking signs must be posted and the no smoking rules enforced in areas where flammable or combustible materials are used or stored. All spills of flammable or combustible liquids must be cleaned up promptly and thoroughly. If spills are not cleaned up promptly and properly, residual flammable or combustible materials may remain at or within the spill site. Things to remember. All spills of flammable or combustible liquids must be cleaned up promptly and thoroughly. 2. Fire extinguishers should be located within 75 feet of workers. 50 feet of gasoline, grease, or oil fires could occur, and within 10 feet of any indoor stored flammable or combustible liquid. 3. All combustible waste should be placed in metal receptacles and removed from the project site as soon as possible. 4. No matter what color of a can is used to store dispensable flammable liquids, what is actually in the can must be clearly marked. 5. Spontaneous combustion can occur when combustible materials is prevented from off-gassing properly and is exposed to oxygen. 6. Flammable liquids will catch fire at temperatures below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Combustible liquids need extra heat, more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, before they will ignite, but both can release fumes that can explode unless area of use is properly ventilated. Thank you for taking Janus Corporation's training on flammable and combustible materials. Please proceed to the quiz.